All right. Well, hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to. Uh, well, actually, yeah, this isn't a Gundam Explained live. This is actually a G Watch. We don't do these too often. The goal is once a month, where with some of the supporters, we do like a more focused conversation. Yeah, today joining me is our mod Ian, who's been in a bunch of these, probably all of them by now. Right?
Probably. I feel
Okay.
like I'm like the reoccurring guest on here.
Oh yeah. And someone that's been recurring, but in the background, Sway, he's been with us a lot, but hasn't really participated on these much. How's it going, Sway?
Hey, glad to be here.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad you're here too, so we can actually talk about some of this. So really, the idea here for this, the topic here is to talk about Requiem for Vengeance. It's coming soon. Like October 17th or something like that. I think it's the date, which is really cool. Really excited about it because it's a UC Gundam show, and I'm really into that universe. I'm pretty hyped about it, and I didn't really know what expectations to have, just because it's like I don't know what to expect. Just something you see. I hope it's enjoyable. Ian, do you have any specific expectations or anything like that?
I think my expectations are pretty low on this right now, outside of like just making sure that they stay true to kind of what's already come before it, as far as staying within that Universal Century timeline, not really breaking the continuity too much, you know?
Yeah, I'd actually say I'm right there with you. So yeah, my expectations are low, but not in a bad way. But it's more of, as you say, about the continuity of this timeline. But Sway, what about you? Have you had any expectations at all?
So, after watching all the trailers and watching your videos, I am very excited for this. It's
Cool.
giving me an 8th MS vibe of being this gritty, down to earth thing. My only concern would be, is this in the main UC timeline, or is this going to be like Thunderbolt with an adjacent timeline?
That's true. So what's interesting is when it comes to like animation, the Thunderbolt animation is based. It's the same continuity, even though some things might be a little different. Like technology. So this is supposed to be the same thing, where it's within the animation canon, but yeah, to what degree might we see some of the technology where it almost doesn't fit? Have any of you noticed anything so far that you question in terms of technology?
I think that comes more from like the Gundam design itself. Like, you have the trailer playing, kind of in the background here. And
Yeah.
like the Gundam it just gives me a lot of like fusion vibes of various other Gundams that have already come before it. Like, I definitely get some vibes of like the EZ8, for example. Got an EZ8 right here for context. The head especially gives me that EZ8 vibe. And then the Zaku just seems like a lot beefier that they're going for. So maybe more like along the lines of like a Goof custom, like maybe that's like a prototype of a Goof custom thing. But as far as like other technology goes, not particularly sure yet. I did originally kind of speculate that there would be a sub arm because there's like 3 beam sabers that this thing is carrying. So, but that might be the only thing that might be out of that kind of technological realm for the 1-year war.
Yeah, that's a good point. A subarm. Yeah, I think you mentioned that before. I didn't. I haven't really thought about it since. But Sway, what about you? Anything that sticks out to you? Like, okay, how are they going to explain this technology?
So far, I don't have any of that other than like the aesthetic choices. Obviously, they want to make the mobile suits look unique to this so they can sell figures in Gunpla. But other than that, that doesn't really bother me.
Okay.
I haven't noticed anything.
Yeah, because I would say in general there is some technology that like it's not super questionable, but it's more interesting. Okay, like how are they going to explain it? Like when we see the triple beam saber rack and how you bring up the subarm, and I didn't really think about that. I just like the idea that you have all these disposable. What if they're like one-time use or something like that? I don't know. I like the subarm idea. So, and actually to speak more on the design, so it's the designer is Kimitoshi Yamane. He's the mechanical designer, and he actually did the mechanical designs for 08 MS Team. So we have the same designer of the mobile suits from 08 MS Team doing this one. So that can explain the look, and I think they went, for that on purpose.
That's pretty cool.
That's
even did seed designs. So,
Now, have they
okay,
shown any
this guy-
water suits? Aquatics?
ooh, that is a good one. No,
I think
because
so.
so far from the trailers, we've seen, the Gundam EX, the Zaku 2, the Guff, which I think I had. Let's see, here we go. Yeah, the Guff that's showing up, the GM, the gun tank. But that's the water part's good because that's what Xeon was known for, and this is going to be on Earth, so I bet that's going to be part of more of the like surprises we'll see later on. And this brings up, speaking of surprises, this brings up another sort of element to this. And I'm thinking in terms of like the recent Star Wars shows, do you think they're going to try to like put in some sort of callback? Like what if like we see Shard show up for example for a second, or maybe we actually see the RX-78 too? Any thoughts on like cameos?
I was actually just thinking about that when you were kind of talking about that. I'm thinking we may get like an 08th MS team cameo or of some kind, just a very brief one.
Ooh.
Like maybe like in the beginning, I'll speculate and say like at the kind of get people caught up. You know how like these show, like I'll use Wing as an example, since they used to do like a lot of those recap things before they would start the actual episode. I'll be like, okay, let's get these guys caught up as to where we're at in the 1 year war right now. And then they'll just do like a quick little clip of the ground Gundams going into battle or something like that.
Yeah, that so that's neat because was it MS Igloo that did some of that where it would show like some scenes from the war and that funny little what was it? That little fan theory about 08th MS Team being a movie? Like what if there's like movie posters of 08th MS Team? But no, so I like that specificity of the cameo being related to 08th MS Team because, there's ground stuff. As far as we know, it's mainly ground stuff going on. And it shares the same mechanical designer. That's pretty neat. And as far as other cameos, I feel like it's not. I feel like you could have some crazy cameos in this without anyone being like mad, like, oh, they just had to show this, because it's not like Gundam was used to doing that. Especially like if you with Zeta, most of the original cast wasn't there, and when Amuro was, it wasn't that long, and you would think he would be for a while. And because of the new type part that was brought up in this, that could open the door for maybe psychic based cameos. What would you guys think if like Amuro showed up, for instance?
I think it'd be interesting if it was in the context of Odessa, like he's on the other side. If you remember in the anime, right before Odessa starts, he's like going off on his own, attacking all these mining facilities, and the Federation brass gets upset with him. Like, what are you doing?
Oh,
that'd be interesting if we saw him or heard about him tangentially, and also if we saw Makuve, because he was the general in charge of defending Odessa. So if we saw Makuve and or the Black Tri-Stars in this front, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, that would, because then it could help inform the fear that the Zeons could have in this new Gundam EX that's showing up, because they heard the stories of the White Devil, because that's kind of how the RX-78 is referred to. So I could see that. Yeah, the cameo might be related to what makes the Gundam EX scary, and that's what the RX-78 was doing. It's a good one.
I'm going to speculate the Garma will make an appearance, since we see like the Gao and all of that kind of make an appearance here.
Okay.
I think that would be kind of a cool thing. Like he's on the way, like again, to kind of go back to the flashes that we might see throughout the show, right? Because I think, if I recall correctly in the trailer, they talk about this taking place towards the end of the 1 year war.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we'll get flashes like through, since it seems like they're going to do some flashbacks here and there. Maybe we'll just get the cameo of like a Garma real quick, getting ready to go off to his right before Char betrays him, for example.
Yeah, I could see that happening. The flashback idea makes sense because this is a vengeance story. And it could be like you brought up at the beginning with the Ga, and you see the mobiles he's jumping. What if that is Odessa? And what if that's what kind of started this path of vengeance for the main character? That would make sense. I would see, yeah, with the pocket watch kind of symbolizing the time. And then, yeah, building up what that vengeance story arc is. So, yeah, when it comes to the plot and setting, yeah, this is a vengeance story. And it does make sense that there's some flashbacks, or the beginning at least takes place during the Odessa time period or around there to kind of set up the vengeance story, the White Devil. I like it. Any other parts have you guys picked up from the trailers to kind of point to maybe another story aspect? I mean, other than new types? Because I think it's been pretty. It's like they're not showing too much, but it's just enough to really get us excited. We just see a bunch of mobile suits, vengeance aspect, the character, on the Xeon side, the White Devil. Any other? I think that's it.
I think we may see a romance aspect like we saw in 8th MS Team, where you have a Xeon and a Federation person developing like feelings. Whether or not they're new types or not is irrelevant.
Okay, that's actually a good point. I didn't think about the character part, but yeah, romance would make sense.
They could do it at like a reverse, like Xeon, since this is going to be from a Xeonic perspective rather than like the Federation perspective, which I think 8th MS Team this tends to go with. I think that the romance thing might make sense, but maybe more so within the team, perhaps. Like I'll throw in a little curveball there and say maybe it's going to be more so romance in sense of one of the team members with this lady character that they keep focusing in on for the vengeance plot.
Yeah. Yeah, so character development, that's a good point. So if we got kind of the basic plot out of the way, and I think the plot kind of informs us on the character development, like you were just mentioning, the vengeance for the lady. I think Solari is her name, I believe. So yeah, we can see character development happening with this character on the side of Xeon. Do you think they might go in, and I almost think they won't do this, but like go into the aspect of her questioning being on what side she is? I think it's going to be less of that and just more of what they're faced with. Yeah,
I think it's going to be pretty clean cut. I think it's going to be pretty clean cut in the sense of she's Xeon. She's a Xeon pilot. She's all for, making sure that the colonies have their, the sides have their independence from the Earth's, Federation and all of that. So I think it's going to be pretty clean cut in that sense. I think where it might get murky is probably like if she encounters the pilot outside of the suit and what kind of develops from there, unless they kind of stick with what I was just kind of speculating on and saying that it's like that romance with one of the team members or something like that who happens to maybe die.
Yeah, so good point. It's a romance with one of the team members that dies that causes this vengeance plot, or if there is a relationship that develops, it would be within, so we don't get that perspective of what side are we on. But if they do that, you would think then we might get that from the perspective of her meeting the pilot of the Gundam EX, and that brings up a really good point, because I don't think in any of these trailers they've really even discussed about any Federation main characters, which that's cool. I wonder if they could go through where it's like a blank slate where you never really see the face of a Federation character, making it really more like a horror movie in a way, because you don't see the face of the enemy. That would be interesting. All right.
I've never seen MS Igloo, so just for, because I think is that told from more of a Xeon perspective, or is that told more from a Federation perspective?
Yeah, it goes real deep on the Xeon perspective, but it does have some other Federation perspectives as well. So it kind of, and then it has there's a couple episodes that dive into the fantasy where there's this Angel of Death, which kind of just, again, like they've already brought up new types in this, so I wonder how far in the fantasy they're going to get, or it might be just simple as cool things like the heat hot cutting a bullet in half,
So I'll speculate to just say that the Gundam is the character, and that's it. Like I'll side with you on that and say that the Gundam is the character, and that's it. Like they don't need to really show who the pilot is in this if they're just sticking to a Xeon story. they don't need to show the pilot because the character is the Gundam. The Gundam is the antagonist, and that's it.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
It would be interesting if they really go with that. I like that. And to go back to mecha design real quick, Sway, I want to ask you, because I know that you're a fan of like double Zeta suits, but how would you rank what you've seen from Requiem for Vengeance?
I would rank it as very, very interesting. On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe an 8. It reminds me a lot of the 8th MS team, where it's super gritty and realistic and detailed. And I think a lot of that has to do with it being in Unreal Engine 5. And it's a lot easier to build some of these assets and have multiples of them in the background than it's not like a hand-drawn cell where you have hand-drawn all these little guys in the background. You can have a bunch of Zaku's on screen.
Yeah, well, what would you say then is the difference between like double Zeta style designs and this, to be able to like both? Is it kind of like you're saying where we kind of get kind of grittier details out of this, which and double Zeta leans more into the like classic anime look? Yeah,
double Zeta you could say is almost more whimsical.
Yeah, whimsical.
It's more out there designs, especially if you're talking about in canon. They're going more experimental. They're trying to build better things. Versus in this, it's we're gonna build the Zaku and then base other things off the Zaku because we know the Zaku works.
Well, yeah, because I heard so, and someone mentioned this in the comments. So when we saw what looked like little pieces of metal on the Zaku, and if I could find an image, I'll show that. What it was instead was tank treads from the tanks, and apparently that's just something that was done in World War II. It's actually very fascinating. I didn't know that. So to me, that's like an example of like attention to detail that I wouldn't even think about. But the fact that they're doing that is pretty cool. All right, back to this. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to bring up, I'm curious what you guys think about this one. It's kind of a favorite aspect of Gundam series, even 08th MS team, but it's that mid-season upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we're going to get that, and I wonder if that's this time going to be like the Zaku. What do you guys think? Is there going to be something like that where it's like an add-on to a currently existing mobile suit to make it beefier? Because kind of like the Easy 8 was like a modification of repairing, but that's still kind of like the new suit. So I guess plot implications could differ, but do you think they're going to have a visually different looking suit like midway through? I feel like they have to.
I agree. They have to do something. I would almost imagine like what if they did like a Gelgu ground type?
See, that's
something
a good idea.
Something truly on par with the Gundam performance-wise and technology-wise. Obviously, they haven't announced any Gunpla of it, so they may really be trying to hide it. But on the other hand, part of me says they want to sell Gunpla.
They were able to do that with Witch from Mercury, where we didn't get to see the model kits until the new one
really?
until it came out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought we saw some of them first, like before the show came out. And we saw some of them already.
Maybe the earlier
slow rollout
from the beginning of the rollout. Yeah, I think from the beginning of the show they were showing suits that weren't out yet, and then I think it was like the later, that's a really good point because I was just looking at the Gundam Universe action figure. Doesn't come out until March of 2025. You'd think it would have it by the show? So it makes me think what other things they haven't announced yet.
Well, I think that part though could be based on what they've already got in the pipeline for the year, and that's why it's not coming out until then. But then
that's true.
Maybe there's some extra content that may come out later. That's why it's taking so long for it to come out until March of 2025. That's
a good point too, to kind of keep it in the in everyone's mind as products and stuff release.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I do love this Gelgu ground type idea though, so that kind of makes sense if you think of like in Kukuru's Doan's Island how they added that Southern Cross Squad where they were trying to make up like the surface type. It was kind of like a high mobility Zaku, but specifically for that. So that's a good call. I didn't think about that.
Have they told us when the show is coming out and if it's going to drop all at once or episodically?
I think October 17th is the date, but I don't think they didn't say episodically, so it's probably all at once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we know how many episodes? Is it 6?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm thinking 8. But I know I saw that. Let's see. Oh, it's 6.
How
So
long
they're
are
not
the
going to have a lot
episodes?
of time to flesh things out unless those.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
Hello.
Oh yeah, hey, I think we
We
just
lost
lost Ian, but he can jump back in. Oh, there he is. Hey, what's up, Ian? Yeah.
I don't know what happened. It was weird.
Oh, well, luckily you're back. But yeah, so it is just 6, which seems short, but maybe that's good enough where they don't drag things out. But yeah, the episode length, though, I'm curious about that. I'm not too sure.
I would hope it's 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a good time frame and for each episode, because that's another thing. Like even with some recent shows, like even that Star Wars Acolyte, where it had a pretty interesting story, but it was done over a bunch of episodes of varying length. So sometimes I guess it depends how deep the story is going to go. So another aspect that will actually kind of lead into this next part is like the animation and art style. So I think in the past when something would be completely CG, it's kind of like is this like a PS2 cutscene? I feel like when it comes to seeing like badass mobile suit action, the Unreal Engine is like showing the best animation I think we could get right now in terms of mobile suit action, right?
I concur.
Okay, cool. The only thing is characters, but I think that's just hard to do. The more realistic you try to make it, the harder it looks. So I'm kind of just like not letting that bother me, just because I think it's going to look a little odd anyway. I think you can't help it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I mean, the more it was a little bit jarring at first to see this in this 3D animation that they're kind of doing, but then I feel like Japan is leaning into 3D animation so much more, and then utilizing Unreal 5 to do this. I mean, the characters from the first trailer to now I feel like they've polished it a little bit more, and things look a lot nicer.
Yeah, I agree. It almost looks like there is a angle of stylizing it just a bit, just so it's not, this isn't fully like a real looking person. And the other thing is like voice acting. For me, I don't really have much expectation of voice acting. Like if it's good, I'll be happy. But I wonder how much to Bandai is it important that the voice acting hits? I'm always curious about that when it comes to animation.
That is a good question, because I feel like some projects, they're like, oh yeah, we want to push this a lot, right? Like, Seed right now is getting a lot of push.
Yeah.
And obviously to capitalize off of Seed Freedom and whatnot, right? Kukuru's Doan's Island didn't really get all that much push.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with Seed too is they did that dub, and they made it available. It's going to be on Netflix, but they even did some mispronunciations. So it's almost like there is a difference between it needing to have a dub and it needing to have a dub that's done exceptionally well. So I think that's kind of up in the air how this could turn out, really.
And maybe that's why they keep coming back to the 1 year war in general, is because then they can update it slowly over time. And then they can say, hey, yeah, we know that these designs were really simple, but hey, let's give you this new thing. And we'll give you some new toys or Gunpla or whatever to go along with it. So that way you can kind of keep coming back to this.
Yeah, it's kind of like a fresh experience. That's a good point. Because it's interesting. I thought even with Seed Freedom, with its mispronunciations, I didn't care, because at the end of the day, I had fun watching that movie. So I think that's going to be one of the least worrying factors, really. Okay. So this other part I want to bring up is like themes and messages. We know that in Gundam, there's a lot of messages and themes that are usually about things centered around like, war being bad, adults not really knowing what's best, sometimes trust, kids and what they're able to do. From here, I don't see any perspective speaking on children or like that being perspective. In fact, it doesn't even seem necessarily like war being bad. Instead, it seems just like a neat little plot where it's just going to be a theme of vengeance and not necessarily like the whole world. What do you guys think about that?
Go ahead, Ian.
I do think this plot is going to be pretty basic in a sense. You know, the Gundam stories as of recent, I'll say Seed Freedom, for example, since we were just talking about that. When you break it down, this theme of the story or the theme of the movie was very simple, you know?
Right.
And sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I'll come at this, is less is more. So if they just stick to this vengeance plot, right? Like and maybe new types being the center of that reason for vengeance and whatnot, I think that will keep people wanting to kind of come back more to get an expounded upon plot later on. Like I said, maybe they'll give us you know, to your earlier question about like a mid-season upgrade, maybe they'll do like hey, we're giving you these 6 episodes right now, then in March we'll maybe announce something more for down the line.
Good
to
idea.
give you a little bit more, sprinkle a little bit more, have you come back for more. In the meantime, we're going to keep working on these other projects. We'll give you some more toys, things like that.
That's a really good idea, because they've done that before, where they will come out with a second season or whatever, and it kind of has a different plot or theme. Yeah, because I do think that with this, keeping the plot basic is best for the getting people interested and on board in Gundam, because it's going to be presented in a new way using this high-end CGI. Mainly English, Western made. Keeping it basic allows people just to get into the world. And the second part could come out in March. That would make sense. And then it would have like, maybe they go deeper into the politics. But also this will get people that are interested in Gundam, when they do go watch the other Gundams, they'll see that it's actually bigger and deeper. So
yeah. And speculation often leads to more hype, which leads to more people wanting more of the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty good ideas there. And then we were talking about the production team. So basically it's mainly a Western produced show, but it has, you know, Sunrise oversight, even the mechanical designer. But I think when it comes to plot and story, even the development, that's mainly Western English, you know, however you would put that. Let's see. So you're sharing Wilbur. Oh, I'm so glad you brought up the OST, Wilbur Roget II. So what was very interesting with the second, and I forgot to bring this up in my review, the second trailer, the end of it had amazing music, in my opinion. Like, it really stood out and really captivated the visuals. So I'm actually hyped about the music. Gundam's usually known for its music. And so did you guys happen to notice music at all when you were listening to the trailer? Or
I did not. And then I started Googling at who's going to be the composer, because I'm very curious. Like you said, Gundam and music is very important together. So as you spoke about in your first video, how they have, this is a low budget kind of thing. Yeah. The cast and crew, they're not going with very big name people. So then I looked up who's the composer, and he makes a lot of videos or music for video games. Like he recently did Helldivers 2, which was a very popular game.
Oh yeah, Helldivers 2, yeah. Star Wars Outlaws.
And so I'm very excited to see where the music goes.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that, because I didn't even think about that, but that's very cool to know. The guy that's working on the music has done some great stuff. That's cool to do Star Wars and to be doing Gundam now. That good for him. That's pretty cool.
Got a very diverse portfolio there.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially coming from video games, that fits nicely with what they're doing here. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to talk about release, but we've got that down October 17th. This fall. Can't wait. That's kind of around the corner. And then merchandise and collectibles. This part is fun for me. Let me share what I was looking at earlier. So far they've announced the high grade for the Gundam EX and the Zaku 2, and then the Gundam Universe Gundam EX. I don't know about you, Ian, but Robot Spirits, I'm there.
Robot Spirits when? Is the question.
Think of like a Metal Robot Spirits Gundam EX would be beautiful.
That would make a lot of sense, actually, for them to do that instead of doing like a ver anime. But they could do what they did with like the new FF or the Zazabi FF, where it's not a metal robot spirits, but they have the adaptation pieces for like the ver anime effect parts.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting because, yeah, speaking specifically about the ver anime line, I mean, they could do that, but that doesn't necessarily make it more special in this case, just because it's modern and all that, and that would just look as good. Like, I mean, the high grades look super detailed in the first place. And
and we don't really have any 1 Year War. We don't really have any 1 Year War related metal robot spirits.
That's true. Actually, a lot of it is stuff after that, like with the Zeta, the double Zeta, the Hazel stuff.
Mm-hmm. I apologize for cutting off, by the way.
No, that's a good point. No, because Sway, I was going to ask you. I know you've gotten some double Zeta kits, but like, are you the type of person that would go out and get collectibles for this show?
I would get collectibles if I enjoyed it.
Okay, so that's a kind of a good barometer to go by.
Because if I don't like it, why am I going to spend more money on it?
Yeah. Well, no, that's a good point though, because I think there's in some cases where, yeah, if I don't like a show personally, I wouldn't buy a collectible from it. But there are some times where sometimes something just looks really cool. I can't really think of anything for me off the top of the head. Yeah, because it's usually if I like it, then I get the collectible from it. Yeah. And you got like the double Zeta team, right?
Yes, I do. Uh-huh.
That's cool.
The Gundam team. Well, most of it's from Zeta anyway.
Oh, okay, yeah, from Zeta. Yeah. No, that's cool. All right. So now, yeah, the last part I kind of wanted to speak on here is in general the importance of Requiem for Vengeance for the Gundam franchise. And I'll just give my thoughts first. I'm really excited about this for the Gundam franchise. As me getting into it later in life when I did, I feel like something like this is vastly different than what they've done before. Even though they've done CGI before, this utilizing something like the Unreal Engine 5, a Western studio kind of behind the production, even though they are making sure they have like mechanical designers from the original productions to kind of make sure it still feels like Gundam. And obviously we hear about that there's potentially a Gundam live action movie. We keep hearing about it and Netflix is distributing it. So to me, this almost seems like the thing you do first to kind of establish Gundam in this more Western style. And I hope what it really does is then it puts Gundam in the light for when the live action trailer comes out, everyone goes nuts. And more people would understand what they're seeing. What are your thoughts, guys?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I really like that thinking.
Cool. Ian, same thing with you?
Pretty much. I mean, as I've kind of been saying throughout the show today, it's basically, I think this is just a good way to keep people coming back for more 1 Year War stuff, because that seems to be the thing that draws people back in, even though we know Zeta's amazing. Double Zeta has its issues, but there's all of these extended universe within universe kind of things that kind of keep people coming back for more, which I think is what the franchise needs right now to keep people coming back 40 years later. It's important to keep revitalizing it every so often.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It reminds me of like when I would go back and discover the video games. It's like they're retelling the 1 Year War because that's the basis. Like if you're familiar, with a refresh retelling of the 1 Year War, it's easier to go back to the original and then establish a foundation for understanding the rest of it. Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think that helped me too, because when I got into it, I bought, it was like my second Gunpla was the Master Grade Origin. And it was like, oh, there's this Origin series that's kind of like, an updated take on everything. So that's pretty smart for them to do. So, that's about it with this. I just wanted to, dive into what we know so far from Requiem for Vengeance, what's coming out. I think it's going to be good. Like and we talked about expectations. Like, I feel like as long as we're getting an awesome portrayal of the 1 Year War in the Gundam universe, I'm not needing Shakespeare here. So yeah, I'm excited.
I have a quick question before we
Yeah.
kind of go into our wrap up here. So I'm looking at these two different pictures of the EX Gundam on the ends of the picture you have up on the screen.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to have detachable backpacks, kind of like the ground Gundam? Because I'm seeing on the one on the left side, there's the that
Gatling thing. Yeah,
like
with the
similar to
backpack probably
Glaive.
for the ammo, and then without it.
Right.
I
Right,
didn't
and
think
then it
about
has and then on the other hand, it just has that 3-beam saber rack that we've been talking about. So I'm curious to see if you guys think that it'll have like interchangeable weapon attachments.
I didn't think about that. I know we were talking about a mid-season like upgrade, but I do think more attachments where there would be like it was kind of like with the aerial, where later on there was that backpack attachment that you could buy for it. Yeah, that's a good
Exactly.
point.
Are you guys talking about for physical releases or in the show itself?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, that's actually a good point where there'd be different times of confronting it. It would have different attachments, and then they could sell that as a pack.
Or what if there's more than one?
Oh, that's interesting.
What if there's more than one EX Gundam, like that they have like kind of like a squad, like the 8th MS team? If we're gonna,
I like that idea. And it made me think, what if throughout the show you think there's just one, but it happens to pop up with different things, and then later on you find out there's a whole squad of them.
yeah.
That's a good idea.
And then we'll throw
Totally
GBO2 in there a little bit. Let's throw some GBO2 and Fortnite related stuff in there because they could use that to put, since this will be a UC suit and GBO2 tends to be more along the lines of a UC game, especially more so on console. They could do like a general support and a raid based around those 3 different configurations.
Yeah, because I didn't even think of this coming to GBO2, and you would think that would be obvious. Like, even though GBO2's gone on longer than they expected, I wonder if, they prepared for that. And then, the Fortnite thing. That's another interesting angle where how much of what we learn in playing it in Fortnite is like lore implications. Well, good stuff. Guys, this is... Oh, yeah, go. Yeah,
I have a question for you guys. How do you think they're going to play with physics? So in the 90s OVAs, we saw that in 8th MS Team and Stardust Memory, that the mobile suits were affected by gravity and momentum. When a suit wanted to jump or wanted to kneel or wanted to move, it had to move its weight. Versus in Zeta, Double Zeta, and the original Gundam, they kind of just always hover. They're like walking really fast. Physics don't really matter when they move around. How do you think this is going to play in this?
I think it's going to be physics heavy. I think they're really going to have a lot of, even how they animated some of the armor pieces when it's moving, it's like the separate pieces kind of have their own weight to it. So I think it's going to be less zooming around, skating around. Yeah. And a lot more of like the physical, like earth gravity stuff. Yeah, I think so.
That's what I'd love to see. And because it's an Unreal Engine 5, if they do any aquatic stuff, I'd love to see how they handle the water physics.
Yeah, now that you've brought up the water-based mobile suits, that's now I'm thinking they have to. That would be like the mid-season like reveals, all this water-based stuff. It's got to be. That's a really good idea.
I'm getting extra hyped now. I need to see. I definitely think it'll be very physics-based. Like we're not going to see a whole lot of zooming around either, especially given how the trailer's been formatted.
Everything's framed very practically. Yeah,
it's very intentional. So I think, the fact that they'll stick to that more heavy physic grounded feel will definitely be just the overall feel of the show.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is going to be awesome. I can't believe it. Yeah. Anyway, anything else, guys?
No, that's
okay.
it.
Well, we'll end it there. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Let me know what you think about Requiem for Vengeance. And if you're interested in joining a G-Watch, check out the links below for supporter stuff. But until next time, be cool.